You turn them on. You don't need to go into Cinema yet. We need to set up our folder structure so that we stay organized.
That beautifully organized stuff.
All right, so once you have your computer up, go into your P drive, your name 2510 work folder. And we're going to make a brand new folder. And we'll call it your last name underscore Miniroom. Okay, so inside your work folder, go to make a new folder, your last name underscore Miniroom. Inside the Miniroom folder, you'll make 3 folders. One will be called Scene, one will be called Textures, and one will be called Renders. All right, now this structure that we're creating is something that we want to make sure that we're utilizing. It's not simply appeasing the teacher just to make these things, we actually want to use them. When you go from computer to computer, like you go from here to your house or here to another lab, you want to make sure that you have all your stuff ready to go. So we have the scene, we have renders, and we have textures. All of our files that we're saving and working on go into scenes folder. All of our textures that we bring in go in the textures folder. Everything we render out goes into the renders folder, okay? As we find we're needing more folders, like let's say we wanted to bring audio in, we would make an audio folder and drop our audio into there to stay organized, okay? All right, so now we can close that and go into Cinema. And remember, we're going into the regular one, not the test render one. We're going to create a room, and inside the room we're going to populate it with a couple pieces of furniture just to go through some tools. So the first thing I want to do is create the room. And so the room is going to be a cube, okay? So we know where the cube thing is. You can go to Create Object Cube, remember that? Yep. Or we can go over here and create a cube. So once we have our cube, then we can adjust the size of it. So I'm going to grab the little top knob and scale it up. Remember your hotkeys, right? Alt left mouse button to spin around, Alt middle to move, Alt right to zoom in and out. It's always good when you first come in the morning just to kind of refresh yourself and start using those. Okay? Now kind of bring it up arbitrarily. The scale in this class isn't going to matter. When you get into other classes, we're really specific about the certain scale that you're using. So for this class, it doesn't matter. So if you made your cube enormous, cool. If you made it kind of medium, cool. Don't go too far small, because that will cause issues, okay? So I'm just going to kind of pull it up, you know, trying to create some sort of cube shape. Okay. And then all of this can be adjusted too. If we decide we want the cube to be bigger later on, we can always scale it up. That's not a big deal either. Okay. So now what we need to do is I need to delete one of my sides. In order for us to be able to see inside the cube, like we could, if I zoom in, I can actually zoom inside the cube. But I don't like to work inside the cube like that. I like to have the cube as like basically a piece of cardboard, like a box, and then I can look inside it that way, okay? So I want to delete one of my sides. So I need to go to Faces. So over here on the left, we can't do it yet. Over here on the left is Faces. That's what that little mode means, and we can grab just the components of it. Now, if I go to this now, you'll see that I can't select any of this stuff. Why can't I select any of it? It's not editable yet. Perfect. So we have to make this shape editable by hitting, does anyone remember the letter? C. Okay, so we hit C, that makes it editable. Then we can go to Faces, click on a face, and then delete it. Okay. Now I don't want to delete the ceiling or the ground. That would be like counterproductive to having a room. Those are the two things you basically need for any room. Okay. Then we can switch back to the model mode and then move it up so he's sitting on the ground. So if you look over here, if I were to create 7 objects and I wasn't paying attention, I would have 7 extra objects there that I don't need. And I can just go through and click on them and then delete them. Also take note that there's little tabs here, so sometimes people accidentally click these tabs, and then obviously that goes away and we have something different, and that can confuse us. All right. So we've created our cube, we deleted the face, cool. I moved it up so that it's on the ground. The next thing I want to do is I want to lock my cube. I don't want to accidentally move my cube. One of the annoying things about Cinema, I think anyway, is if I'm in the move tool and I click and drag anywhere, it moves the item. Okay? And I don't want to move my room. If I put a table in the room and it's perfectly flat on the floor, it's very easy to accidentally scoot it over or get it out of the way. So I want to create a layer that will lock this in. So if you go over to the right where there's a tab that says Layers next to Attributes and you click on that, I'm going to make sure that my cube is selected, and I'm going to go over to File and say New Layer from Object Selection. Okay, and then when you make a new layer, now we can call it something. So if we go to double click it, we can call it Room. Okay, the layers in 3D do not work the same as layers in 2D. So like Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, InDesign, anything that's on a top layer is going to be on top of the other stuff. Anything that's on a bottom layer is below it. In 3D, obviously this doesn't matter because we're working with 3D space. The layers are simply there to help us organize our stuff. On the scene that we saw that the guy worked on where he had the tree and all the leaves, he would want to take all the leaves and put them on their own layer. That way he can turn them off. That way he works a bit quicker. Yes, ma'am?
How did you do that layer?
On the layers here, did you go to layers there?
Oh, okay.
And then File, New Layer from Object. Okay. So if we go to some of these, this V here is visibility. Okay, is this item visible? That's the eyeball. Photoshop has it, Illustrator has it, we're used to it. The next one is this R. You see the R underneath this? And that means renderable, meaning that if we were to hit the render button, this thing may or may not render depending if that's clicked. Okay, we're going to jump over to where it says L and just click the lock. Okay, so if you see the L right here, all right, so now that we have our room, it's locked, we can't accidentally move it. And that was the goal of that, is that we don't want to accidentally move the room and screw up where stuff is lined up. Especially with this, because it is so easy to move things around or to scale or rotate things accidentally. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to learn 3 tools today, okay? There's 3 tools that every model that I use uses these 3 tools over and over and over again. Literally from the first assignment to the last assignment, you're going to use these 3 tools throughout every single assignment, probably multiple times a day, okay? So I want you to make another cube, and this is going to be your desk, okay? Now we're creating a piece of the desk right now. We're creating just the top piece. So looking at the scale of your room, find something that's appropriate for the scale of that desk, okay? So for mine, you know, my room's pretty big. This is like cathedral ceilings and everything. I'm gonna just create a nice little desk. And I'm even gonna raise it off the ground just so I can see about where the height of it's gonna be. Okay. Okay. So we have our cube, we have our tabletop. What we need to do is add legs to this. Now, one way we could do this is we could go out and we could model a leg and duplicate the leg to the four corners. In this case, what I want to show is how we can build one structure out of one item. Okay, so we're going to use this cube and build everything out of it. All right, so what I need to do in here is I need to create divisions for where I want those legs to be. All right, so if you remember from before, we have different options over here that we could set. None of the options here allow us to actually add divisions throughout this. In some softwares like Maya, it allows me to just add divisions right there. Cinema does not have that feature, so I have to add them manually. Okay, so we're going to hit C to go to our edit mode. So now we have our edit mode. We're going to switch to edges. So I'm going to switch to the edge right here. Okay, now you could also hit enter. So if you hit enter, you see how I can toggle through all three of those point selection, edge selection, and then face selection. Okay, so throughout we'll be doing that kind of thing. We're going to stick to edges right now. And I need to marquee these edges all the way around, basically this entire thing. So I'm going to switch my selection tool up here to the rectangle and grab the entire thing. Okay, so I switched it to the marquee, the rectangle selection, and just drew a box around it. All right, you may need to zoom out just so you can actually see the entire thing. And then you can grab the entire bit.
I didn't grab anything.
All right, now one thing that we're going to see here, if you look at mine, is as I'm selecting that, look at the back of it. It did not select anything underneath it. One of the defaults inside of Cinema is that it only selects things that are visible. So when I marquee, if it's not visible, I can't select it. Okay. Luckily, over here in our attributes, so if you switch back to your attributes and not the layers anymore, I could turn on or turn off only select visible elements. And now when I marquee, turn that off. Now when I marquee, it will grab everything. Okay. The knife tool is one of the probably the most versatile tool you're going to use because it can do so many different things. Okay. Now it helps if we're kind of lined up and can look at this thing basically from the head on and not from some weird perspective angle. So if you hit the middle mouse button, you'll see how we switch to a 4 view. Okay. And then if we move our mouse over this window, which is the top, and tap the middle mouse button again, then we go into that view. Okay. You can also use this little guy here. He switches you in and out of views too. So if you don't have a middle mouse, like some people with a Mac, then you can use that. No. I'm just teasing. Yeah. Okay.
Mac can't handle this.
No, it's for Mac and yeah. All right, so now we can see this from the top view. So we want to use the knife tool. So if you right click, you don't have to do this part yet. If you right click, it'll show you, here's the knife tool, okay? Now all of these are the hotkeys for each one of those things. So you'll see that the knife tool has two hotkeys, M, squiggly K, or just K. So what that means is that we could use either one. So if I hit M, and I'll click off of this so we can see this. If I hit M, it brings up, here's a bunch of modeling hotkeys, a bunch of modeling tools that we might be using. So throughout this, we're probably going to be using M and then grabbing that, okay? So K knife right here, K knife. So we just hit M and then hit K, okay?
It's nice to meet you.
So under the tools on the right, it says mode line. There's a bunch of different ones that we can play with. If I click on that, you'll see there's hole, there's plane, there's loop, and there's path.
I can't click on the mode.
You can't click on the mode? So the line tool is kind of neat. So what I can do is I can hold my mouse out here. So I'm just holding the mouse button down. Then I can hold shift and drag it. And then when I let go of the mouse, it automatically divides it right there. Okay? So it's a pretty nice tool to be able to do that kind of stuff. Now before you do it, because you're going to have to hit undo if you've done it, because of where we're looking, I'm just going to switch back to my other tool. Hey, where'd it go? There it is. Come on. There it is. All right, so you'll see that it only added that knife tool right underneath it. Okay? So why would it do something like that? Looping would have been one way. Okay? Restrict to what? Or visible only. Yeah, sorry. Yes. So visible only is checked. So what that means is, again, it's only doing this to whatever is visible. Okay? So again, we have to click visible only off. So that's going to be something that throughout is going to throw you, because from the top view it looked fine. Okay? And you could go through, this is what typically we would do, is we would add the divisions for each leg. Oh, it's not going to go that way yet because I haven't selected them. But we add them for each leg, then we would go here and say, hey, they're not there. And then we'd have to go back and undo it and fix things, okay? So just be aware of that as we're working, that we have to uncheck that off. Okay? So now with that trick checked off, we're going to go in and add these divisions. Okay? Now we can only add them in one direction first. We can't add them in both directions because then these other ones aren't selected. Okay? So again, we could say select cuts. And now the cuts will be selected, but then nothing else gets selected. So it's always this like thing where we're bouncing around trying to find the best settings.
So do we turn select cuts off?
You want visible only turned off. You want select cuts off. And that should be it. Okay?
Go back to it, reselect it, and then go back into this view again.
Correct. Now the quick way to get back to the selection is you tap the space bar. Then you can marquee, tap the space bar again, you're back in cut. Okay, and I'll do that again so you can see it.
So essentially, we just drew the cut lines, the space bar to cut the lines.
Correct.
Okay.
There we go. No, I'm sorry, space bar didn't cut the lines. Space bar just allows us to select it.
Oh, okay.
Okay? All right, so that tapping the space bar is basically a toggle. It's getting us out of one tool and into the selection tool again. So watch up here. Right now I'm in the knife tool. That's why I'm on the knife, okay? So when I tap the space bar, the knife tool goes away, and now I'm on my marquee selection. So then I could marquee my selection. Then I could hit the space bar again, takes me back to the knife, okay? So like in Illustrator, you can hold, I think it's the control key, that toggles between the last two tools you were using. Very similar, okay? So we just have to get used to using that. Now, one thing that may be apparent in some of yours is as you're drawing these lines, maybe they didn't come in perfectly even, right? Like maybe we did something like that, and we need to kind of make this a little bit more even looking. So using the grid lines down here, you could line up one of these and then use that as reference for lining up the other side. So watch mine how I do this. So the first thing I do is I go to the move tool because I'm going to be moving my edges. I make sure I'm in edge mode, and then I just double click the edge I want to move. Okay? When you double click something, it selects it all the way around. Right? So instead of just grabbing the one edge, it grabs all the edges all the way around. So we're in the move tool, we're in edge mode, we've double clicked the edge, and it double clicks it to select it. Then I'm going to look at this edge here. And if I look at the spacing between these two pieces here, this edge and that line, then I can use that as my reference to say, okay, well this edge here should be about there. Okay, and then I can double click this edge and scoot this over until this looks square. Double click this edge, move it until that looks square. So we don't need to be terribly precise here. We're just kind of eyeballing those corners, trying to get them as even as we can. So we're in the move tool, we're in edges, we've double clicked, and then we can just adjust where this is at. Okay, and just grab the arrows. Don't try to grab any other direction, just the arrows.
I already did that. Control Z.
Now, however big those squares are, that's how big your legs are going to be. So if you don't want your legs to be enormous, then shrink them down. All right. Now, feel free to, if you get this done while I'm walking around, jot some notes down about what we're doing. Okay, that way you know certain hotkeys we're using, certain methods to get in and out of there. Okay, because they're not going to go away. All right. So now, watch on here how I do this, and then we'll do it together, okay? So that was the knife tool. That's what we use to add divisions. Most of the time we're starting off with a very blocky surface, like a cube, adding divisions and then tweaking it from there, and then adding divisions and tweaking. So in order for me to get these legs to come out of here, I'm going to do an operation called an extrude. Come on. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to grab faces. So I'm just going to shift click each one of these. And every one that I've clicked, that's where it's going to extrude out of. Now you have to watch too, because sometimes you could accidentally select something on the opposite side, or something you didn't mean to select, like that face there, and that could cause some issues later. So you always want to make sure that you grabbed only what you want to actually extrude. Then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit M to get my menu up. And then if we look, extrude is T. So then I can hit T. And then the way that these tools work is I grab right on this and I drag. And as I drag to the right, it pulls it out. Okay, and then we'll get actual legs pulling out of our surface. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo. And we'll do this all together. Okay. So first thing I need to do is switch to my perspective view so I can actually see it. So how do we get to perspective view? Yeah, middle mouse, right?
Yeah, sorry.
So we use the middle mouse and we can just toggle and switch to perspective view. Okay? Then we need to grab these faces underneath here. So what's the hotkey to switch from edges to faces? Hit the enter key, right. Okay, so you can just tap the enter key and it'll switch us to faces. And then we just click one, hold shift, click the others. Okay, don't be in a rush to do it. Just hold shift, click the other ones. It may help after you've selected them to hit O on your keyboard so that it frames it, so that you're kind of pivoting around to this area. Okay? That.
Yeah, like, there it is.
Another thing that will help is your navigation menu. Okay, so right now as I spin around, it's kind of annoying, but I'm spinning like way over here. Okay, so wherever I let my mouse off of, that's where it spins around. Okay, so it's kind of weird how it does that, and for me it's kind of annoying because I don't like that. I like it to spin around whatever object I have selected. So under the camera menu, under navigation, you can set it to object mode. And so when you hit O and you spin around something, we're spinning around the object itself, not wherever we've clicked. Okay, so I feel that's more helpful, but that's because I'm used to using that. All right, so we have all four faces selected on the bottom, right? Then what do we hit?
Extrude, which is, yeah, T.
Right? Hit M to bring this up, and then you can hit T to go to the extrude. And then we're just going to click and drag right on the orange things, and just drag to the right until they get to the bottom. Okay, they could even duck below the ground if we need to. Yeah, don't think you need to wait for me to save your stuff. I usually forget.
Whoa. No, I didn't know if we were keeping this one or not.
Yes, we're going to keep this one. But don't be afraid to remake some of your stuff too. That's no big deal. So make sure it goes in your scenes, and I'm just going to call mine Miniroom 01. Okay. So now we have just a very basic table. This isn't a desk yet, it's a table. A desk usually has storage on it. So we want to add to the back of this, we want to add like a little compartment that we could pull up. Okay? So my table legs are pretty chunky too.
Yeah. Mine are too.
Just as a example of how we can adjust stuff after the fact, if I go to my side view or front view, I can very easily see everything from one side, right? So think of this as like a clay type thing. So if this was clay and I wanted these things to be smaller, I would just kind of like squish them together, right? So if I go to my points, I go to my selection tool and I marquee some of these, I can just scoot this over. Okay, so I can just shrink my legs, and then I would switch to the front view and do the same thing. Okay, but don't be concerned about that now. This is something at any point while we're doing this, you can change any of that stuff. Okay, you can always come back to this and tweak any of the settings that we're doing. All right, it's just going to bother me, so I just did it real quick. All right, so what we want to do is I want to pull up, like if I wanted to store books on this shelf, I want to be able to have a spot, like a little bookshelf on this thing, okay? So again, I could model something separate, drop it on top of it, but the purpose of this assignment is to build everything out of one piece. So what I want to do is I need to add a division right down the back. Like if I was building this, like right where I want that shelf to be, I need to add a division. So which view should I add that division in? The top view. Someone said top. That was right. So I'm going to go to the top view. Okay. What tool should I use to add a division?
Knife?
Knife tool. Okay. We only have one tool so far to add division, so we'll add that one. So I need to switch to my edge mode. I need to use my marquee and grab everything. And then I need to go to my knife tool and just draw a line about there. Okay, your top view may be turned to depending on how you modeled your stuff, so just reorient. This is going the long way of the desk, just a division going straight down. Make sure you're in the edge mode, make sure you've selected everything, use the knife tool and slice it down the line.
Is that going to be like the back or
The back. The front wouldn't make sense because then we can't see it because it's in front of our face. Imagine this desk, if I had right here, it popped up and have a bookshelf. So we're in perspective mode. We've grabbed those back faces that are going to be part of this. Okay, so we have to make sure we're in face mode here. We're in some sort of selection mode. Just so you can see, the selection modes are for me, they're really different than other programs I've used. So these are like special selection modes. For most things I select, I just jump to the move tool if I'm just picking on stuff I want to select. Okay. These ones are like marquee. Like if I'm marqueing an area, I'll use that. But for this kind of stuff, I'm just using the move tool to select stuff. Okay. So then we switch to our extrude, and we extrude it up. And this is figure out the height of a book. This is how tall this one should be. Or figure out, if you guys know what CDs are, figure out the height of a CD, and that's how tall that should be.
Mine is not extruding. I'm still getting like the hill the front comes up with it.
All right, so this can be a little bit tricky, obviously, if you're not used to doing this kind of thing. So I'll do it just one more time so you can see it. So we have those faces selected. Again, kind of look around, make sure we don't have anything else selected. We click and drag right on the orange. Even though there's a move tool there, don't use the move tool because that is just for moving. Now if I click and drag here, and let's say I go too short, okay, I go like that high. If I want to adjust that last one, I just grab the move tool at this point and just move that last one, okay? So the extrude is the extrude, and then I can move it where I need to. And then I can extrude a little bit. That's the piece of wood that's our shelf. And then I extrude a lot of it. That's our second shelf. And then I extrude a little bit more, and that's the other one. Okay? So now I have this pocket and shift click this pocket. Those are our two storage areas. And then I just extrude those inward.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so you extrude up till you get to the bottom of the first shelf. Extrude the shelf. Extrude till you get to the top of the second shelf, and then you extrude the piece of wood there. So it should look like that before you start extruding. Alright, now before I go on to the next step, here's some stuff to also consider. As we're working on this, think about the possibilities of what you could do with it. So with this one, we've isolated areas that we want to extrude up, isolated areas we want to extrude in. So that same process can take you into other arenas. So if I go here and I grab all my stuff, and I'm just going to jump to my front view this time. There we go. I'm going to go with my knife tool, and I'm just going to divide this, divide that, oops, divide this, divide that. And then I switch back to my faces. I switch back to my move tool so I can select stuff. Come on. And then I go to my extruding. Now I can have little shelves inside here too, okay? So literally anything, as long as it has a division, we can separate it and extrude it and do whatever, all right? So extrude is going to be one that you're constantly going to use. We watched the video last class about the speed modeling, right? Yep. In that speed modeling, he's using splitting all over the place, and he's using extruding all over the place, okay? So these tools, like I said, you'll use them for a character, for a vehicle, for a whatever, all the time. Just so you can see what some of the other tools do, or some of the other uses of the knife tool. You're not going to be doing this, but I'm just going to show it to you. Let me grab my stuff. Come on. There we go. So with the knife tool, one of them is line. And the way that line works is as I click and drag, it's drawing a line across that area. So if I did that, you can see how I get a line that goes directly like that, okay? Which is pretty neat. The other way that we could do this is by a loop. And what a loop does is it draws it along this path, okay? So that way, as I'm drawing this, I don't need to be in the top view or the front view or the side view. I can do it right from perspective view, which is awesome, okay? And typically I use this one more than I would use the line one, okay? And then there's path too, and that's kind of neat, but that's a little bit more advanced. We'll touch on that a little bit later. Cool. All right, so here is our desk. At this point, we could adjust certain things, like, you know, the proportions of my desk are kind of character-like. So I may want to jump into my front view for this and maybe grab all of my points here and just kind of tweak it. Again, you can tweak your stuff later. I'm just doing it to mine now just so you can see it. Okay, I can grab these points. Oops. Make sure you grab all the way down. Make sure I grab all the way down. There we go. Yeah. And so you can see how very quickly I can just kind of resize this and adjust what it's looking like just by grabbing points and pushing them over. Okay? If I want this shelf to be taller or shorter or whatever, grab the points and I can adjust it. Okay? Now on this one too, see how I have the 3 boxes underneath? I could have extruded just the 3 boxes from the top and left that bottom area as one big area to go into. Once I've gotten to a certain spot like this though, it's a bit trickier to undo all of that, to like basically delete and re-add stuff. Sometimes it's quicker just to literally undo. There we go. And then go back to faces and say I want to pull these in and then pull those in. There you go, that looks better. Now I can switch back to my move tool, switch back to my points. I'm just going to go and select the top stuff here and scoot this down. Select these points, nudge that in. Okay, even like this, if I wanted that to be bigger or whatever, I could stretch that out.
How did you get the row all the way down?
Because when I selected it, I went to something like this where it's just like a side, and I just marqueed that whole area. Okay, so part of the hardest thing is selecting stuff. So when I'm in this view, I'm kind of isolating what I want to select so I can draw a box around it. If I'm like this, there's no way I'm going to be able to isolate just that row. I need to turn around and grab it. Okay, so now let's look at some other areas that we could use this same technique to create other pieces of furniture. All right, so this is a you watch me and then you can take some notes and create these things on your own. You'll have some time after this to kind of play around. So I built the desk, right? And this is something that probably we won't even see in the future, but this is called a bookcase. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bookcase and I'm going to add divisions to it and then do basically the same kind of thing. It's probably a good size for a bookcase. I'm going to go to my faces, grab my faces. Oops, grab edges, sorry. And then inside here, use my knife, go to this view. Now there is, where was that one at? Loop. That wasn't loop. Let me see. There was another one that I used that I really liked. Edge cut. Okay, so edge cut is a neat one because our knife tool is not precise. Okay, it sucks. As we drag each one of those, it's kind of like wherever you drug it, that's where it's going to end up. The knife tool, though, or the edge cut tool, I could pump in how many divisions I want. So if I do a little bit of planning, if I go here to 4 divisions, and I click on this, oops, make sure I have create n-gons off. That's not doing it right. Hold on. Edge cut. Pretty sure that was the right one I used. Yeah, that was it. Oops, N. F.
What the? Okay.
Let's grab everything. Oh, it is edges. That was right. Alright, it's not behaving. I'll just go back to the knife tool. That tool should have let me add specific divisions. It did yesterday anyway. I don't think it was this one. Yeah, this one does too. There it is. Okay, so with this one, I'm basically adding come on. Divisions. I don't know why it's not going the right direction though. There you go. Switch back to this. Oh, because I picked the wrong way again. YZ. No. YX. There we go. And restricted selection, spacing. That's the direction I want. There we go. All right. So now I can just specify a spacing value here. And get some preview before I add anything. Oops, one more cut too many. All right, that should be good. Okay. So that allowed me to add pretty evenly spaced divisions throughout this entire thing. Okay. So that's one way that I could add divisions to this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab each of these. And you wouldn't have to do this, obviously, but you could. Actually, I'm just going to grab the whole thing. Grab the whole thing. I'm going to do that 1,000 times. And I'm going to do a bevel. Okay. So what I want to do here is I don't have those extra divisions right at each one of these spots, and I need that. Otherwise, when I extrude, it's going to be one big blob. So I'm going to use the bevel, and I'm just going to say a solid bevel. And look what it does. See how it automatically kind of offsets everything pretty perfectly. Okay, so I can hit enter, go to my face selection tool, and just grab these faces. Then I go to my extrude, which is not the same as Maya's, MT, and then I can drag that in. Okay, so just to show you that again, here's another item. Close enough. Edit mode, go to edges, grab everything, go to the edge cut, make sure, oops, not the edge cut, that's the wrong one. Go to the knife tool, there it is, go to plane, and I pumped in 4 divisions, 162, and set this to XZ. And then I can position this where I need it to be. And that evenly cuts it 4 times. Then I can switch back to my selection tool, shift clicking, oops, I would grab the whole thing before, grab the whole thing, and then just going to bevel, which is S, and then setting this to solid. And then I hit enter, and now it's just a matter of grabbing these faces and extruding these faces inward. Okay. Now we could also use this for other things. Here's another cube. Scale, there you go. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to grab this face right here. I'm going to extrude it. Extrude. I'm going to use a different extrude. This is just a different form of it. It's extrude inner. Basically, I just want to extrude it inward. Okay, same thing, click and drag. There it is. And now I'm going to use a regular extrude and extrude it in there. And so now I just created a picture frame or a computer screen. Okay. And then I could use that and put that up on the wall. So let me just go to my regular tool. I'll move this over here. I'll go to my rotate. I will click and drag, then hold shift so it snaps it. There we go. And then I can take this and duplicate it. Oops, wrong button. Hold control and drag it. That's not duplicate. Hold control and drag it. And then I'll have different picture frames up on the wall. And I could even scale them up. Maybe that's a diploma. Okay, then I can start to reposition some of these. Maybe I'll put the desk back in the back wall. Grab some of these, push those back there. Cool. Okay.